Have you guys been doing a bunch of press and promo jointly, sort of for the Matter of Perspective anthology? Has this been sort of a like one last campaign together?
Yeah, basically, pretty much.
Well, how has that been? I mean, that's just such an interesting time to sort of say, you put the flag in the ground and say, okay, this is our last joint project together, collecting all of this work that we've done together over the years. And then you sort of get this little victory lap. I mean, stuff like this, where, you've already said it's done, like we put it out, this is what it is, and you can experience it. How does it feel to sort of, then go on and talk about it and still be connected in that way, knowing that eventually you'll end up, going on to your respective next steps?
Well, yeah, to me, it's exactly what you say. It feels kind of like a victory lap, and one where I think we both, like think back a lot about how it all started and where. What happened along the way and stuff, and it's almost in some cases it's almost therapeutical. But like we've also had some interviews where they just pretty much asked stuff about like, hey, how'd you guys meet? What is the name?
Right.
Yeah, they're basically asking us to recite our bio. But hey, that's part of the game.
Yeah.
Part of the game. So this is a very, very welcome, fresh breeze.
It's also nice to just like be able to finally like talk about it in its entirety. And there's no like secrets anymore or like hidden things or stuff we have yet to announce or anything like that. So it's a nice like.
Yeah,
I don't want to call it a post-mortem, but it's kind of like, it's nice to like look back upon it and like, it's not like we're not asking ourselves like, can we talk about that yet?
Right, exactly. Yeah, can we talk about it? And I've talked to other people about this where it's this funny thing. A lot of times in what we do, you work for so long on a project, whether it's an album or a song or a video, whatever it is, you put it out and it's the culmination of all this work. And, within 24 hours, all anyone is interested in is, oh, so what are you doing next? What's after this? And there's never time to sort of process the accomplishments, to process the experiences that you have, right? And it in some ways, it must be interesting. It must be an interesting feeling, to sort of be able to step off the hamster wheel for a second and just sort of take stock of everything.
Yeah, definitely. It's we've been pushing ourselves. Also, that like as soon as something was done, we were already thinking about the next thing most of the time. And I personally feel that like. A little weird now everything's out. Like I have all this free time all of a sudden and I don't really know fully what to do with it yet.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's been kind of like go for like the last 5 years. So,
yeah, pretty much.
Well, I guess the question is, do you guys like it that way? Like, does that fit with your personalities? Are you the kind of people where the second something is done, you're kind of like, okay, what's next? Let's keep this moving. Or does that pace give you anxiety and you would rather, be able to have sort of more of a measured pace of things?
I think for me, at least a little bit of both. Definitely like the grind of it most of the time. But yeah, there's been moments, for instance, in between tours that we were both just really tired of all the traveling. And that there was the deadline of a new EP was coming up or something. And yeah, those moments were a little tough. But apart from that, I can't say that I regret any of it.
Same question to you, man. In those last 5 years, this whole project, how does your brain process this kind of an experience, a career? Are you the kind of person who always needs a project to be working on? You need to know the next thing? or is it nice to have a little downtime now and then?
I don't know. I feel like I'm super schizophrenic when it comes to that. Like whenever I'm in the middle of a project, I always think like, man, after this, I should take some time off. And then when it gets to the point where I could take time off, my mind is like, no, you need to keep working. Work needs to be done.
Right. But then I guess the question, because I have that too, and if I sit for too long, I just get jumpy and anxious, and it's not great for me. But then I always wonder, like, is that something that's just been programmed into me? Because that's, everyone in the music world, everyone, whether they are or not, just from social media, looking at what everyone's doing, it seems like everybody's busy all the time, right? Everybody's killing it 100% of the time. Everybody's, working their hardest. And I think that builds in this expectation of pressure. And I think, I don't know. I don't know where I fall on it. Sometimes I think that's probably healthy competition. But then other times I think, why are we all forcing ourselves to be miserable a lot of the time?
Yeah, definitely. I fully agree with that, actually. It's also interesting to see how the whole music industry has grown into something that it's so much about like showing signs of life constantly, like every posting as much as you can, and also the stuff outside of what you're actually making, and the more the better. And I personally sometimes wonder if that is even beneficial to what like it is that the person makes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I remember like when we first started doing the project, and kind of like we're conditioned to this thing where we had to just release one song every month.
Yeah.
And I often kind of like look back on that, and it's like, what caused that? Like what change in the like music industry has caused for this thing where artists, like, especially if you're new, you need to release one song a month, and there's this crazy crunch on all the stuff that you need to do. And yeah, I often also question, like, does that take away from actually making something good, and like being so active on Twitter or Instagram or whatever? Like, we didn't sign up to be social media. Yeah, we didn't sign up to be social media influencers. Like, we're here to make stuff, and it feels like sometimes it's super counterintuitive.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And especially for a project like what you guys do, where there is, it's beyond music, right? There's this strong visual component. There's, it's sort of an all-encompassing project that you can interact with on multiple levels. And even with all of that, there's still this expectation that also we need to know about, what you're eating for breakfast. And and it's I don't know. It's just such an odd thing. I don't know why I've been thinking about that lately.
Yeah, the more that I think about it, the more odd it gets, actually. Yeah. Imagine if like if in the time that, for instance, Jimi Hendrix was alive, that this was already the mentality. I really wonder what the music world would look like, and
well, it's much harder to have those towering figures like a Jimi Hendrix in the social media age, right? Because there's something, using him as an example, he's this sort of mysterious, unknowable figure,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And
which you cannot translate into a social media persona, I think. It is like,
yeah, because he's larger than life. And if you're just putting your day-to-day life out there, I think that's an impossible thing to achieve. Yeah. I mean, there's examples like, someone like R.L. Grime. I mean, he doesn't post anything. The only time he posts is when he puts out something new, basically. And he's able to make that work. But I don't know. He's maybe one of the rare exceptions.
I think that's also maybe like, not necessarily like a generational thing, but like he was already big before the whole EDM artist / influencer game started, and I think the same with like Justice, for example, or Gesaffelstein. Like those guys are completely off the grid when it comes to social media, but such larger than life projects. Same with like RL Grime. But I think that's just like they got to that point before Instagram became so important. And I think if you get to that point, if you got to that point in that point of time, then it's not really needed to, post what you're eating for breakfast.
Yeah, I think it would even be countereffective because that's not how you got known, how they got known, and it would only take away from what they've built up, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true, and it makes me wonder about you guys, and when you first started off, you were in the wake of the EDM boom, and I think because people like to try to categorize things, a lot of people initially, grouped you in with trap music or with bass music. But then it sort of over the years became apparent that, you had aspirations well beyond that. And so I'm curious, for you guys, what was the experience like of really trying to define your own sound, define your own identity, and carve that path, especially at the start when people kind of just want to put you into one group or another?
It was an interesting question.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that's always kind of for me been apparent just with the whole like EDM boom and especially like American EDM and bass music is that it felt like we've always been like tourists into that environment. Yeah. And because we've never actually like lived it ourselves. I think our like EDM boom, so to say, was more like old school dubstep and drum and bass in the Netherlands. So that's kind of how we didn't even live like that big.
No, and we didn't go to that many club shows. We didn't. We weren't part of any social like environment where there were a lot of other people who were also listening to that kind of music. It was just
where does the thought to even start the project come from then, if you're not sort of, if you're not going out to the clubs every night, or you're not sort of really immersed in that scene from the start? How do you come to that music? How do you land on that idea?
Mr. Carmack was the probably the biggest reason that we decided, like, hey, this trap thing, this weird 808 hip hop kind of beats stuff is actually pretty cool and stupid in a good way. So
he was definitely the deciding factor.
We just decided like, hey, let's see if we can get close to that sound, or at least try out what our version would look like or sound like. And just see what happens. And it was, that big joke in the beginning.
I mean, which song was it? I think it was like Kick It Up by Mr. Carmack.
Yeah, Kick It Up.
Yeah, Kick It Up.
Kick It Up.
Dude, to us, it's such a classic.
That's an amazing, I mean, Carmack, I think, not that he's underappreciated, but I think he's more influential than a lot of people know, especially in the artist community.
Yeah, and he has carved out this really unique path for himself, and what he's doing like these days is very inspiring to see as well. Like how he works with a full brass band and all that stuff. It's great.
Oh man, insane. Did you get to catch any of those shows he was doing with the full band?
No, sadly enough, not.
They were wild, man. I got to catch one of them, and it was really interesting. I mean, it really just felt like you were watching a funk band. I mean, it felt very separate from what he is known for, which was really interesting because it's still the same crowd coming to see him.
That would be an interesting experience, though, seeing like the same like trap crowd come to a show like that. Must be an interesting juxtaposition.
What was fascinating?
But I think the trap crowd itself is also evolving in the sense that these kids who maybe saw it as a joke 5 years ago, they grew up as well, but they still love the sound, and that's also, I think, that there is so much like someone like JD Beck, this drummer kid. It's not really trap or anything that related, but I do think that a lot of jazz influences get back into trap and hip hop and all that stuff. And I love it. I don't really know where I was going with this, but
no, that's all right. I mean, I can connect it back because the Carmack show, he was basically doing 2 shows a night. So he would do this early show with the band, and then he'd do a DJ set after that. So it's just like 1, 2 in a row. He was opening for himself basically, and and it was really interesting because it was the same crowd the whole time. Everybody stays in the building. And to me, it sort of made the DJ set more meaningful because then you sort of see what's influencing it, you know? And it's and the crowd was cool. I don't think everyone knew what to make of the live band show, but I think everybody enjoyed it. I mean, even for you guys, your live show has certainly evolved over the years. I mean, talk a little bit about that and wanting to, the idea of, wanting to expand what you do, give people different experiences, you push your own boundaries while still connecting to whatever it was that people, found about you, appealed about you in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely the reason for that was definitely a combination of that we wanted to show something that was more interesting than just like pushing some buttons on a CDJ and jumping around a little bit, which is cool. You can make a great party by doing that. But also, we ourselves got a little bored by that. Also because for a long time the sets were pretty much the same because of the visual aspect of the cube that was supposed to run together, of course.
Right. So it's, you can't deviate too much because you've set up this whole...
Exactly.
It's like this whole choreographed thing. And then if you do that like 30 times in a month, then it just becomes kind of boring.
Right. Yeah. No matter how much thought you put into it at the start.
Yeah. And it was also before we started using like SMT technology to have it be a little bit more flexible. So it's,
well, for the people who don't know, talk a little bit about that. What is that technology? What did that allow you to do?
So it's basically, and I might actually be very wrong in my explanation, but please bear with me. It's kind of an audio signal that is only like readable for a computer and is linked to a track or to like an idea like a track, and then that track there it's the bridge between the track and the visual software, pretty much.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of like DJing with videos, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and before that, it was we just build it all out, everything, and the visual set was more like a movie that just played alongside it.
Mm. And at the start, Hein, for years, you were touring as well, right? And handling all the visual aspects?
Yeah, I was handling all the visual aspects because, like Vince said, we didn't have SMPTE or anything fancy back then. So I had my laptop and a little launch pad on there to kind of correct the tempo of the video if we fucked up.
It was take into account the lag of the button as well.
that was a prime point of our sound check, doing the lag, the input lag compensation.
Oh, that's really funny.
Which was it was super jerry rig, but it was fun. And then I did a little bit of DJing too. And we had fun, but I think maybe going into like maybe your next question, I guess, like why did I stop doing that? I think we both kind of found that like Vince wanted to do more exciting stuff on stage, and I wanted to kind of take a step back and have more of a macro image of what the show was going to be like. And I think that just really worked well together with me not being on stage.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for you, it's an interesting question, right? Of like who, like what roles we end up wanting to fill and being comfortable in. For you, did you like being on stage, or did it not really make a difference to you?
It was definitely fun. I mean, like there's some sort of adrenaline rush, of course, that comes with being on stage, and that was cool. But if I like took a good hard look in the mirror and thought about like, hey, where do I want to still be on stage in like 5 years? Then no, no. But
Yeah.
it was a cool like teenage dream, to be a touring DJ for a bit. But I think I checked that box, and it was kind of time to like move on.
Well, sure, and that makes total sense. I mean, I've always liked the way you guys presented the project, right? Because it was always presented as this mesh of audio and visual experience, everything sort of on the same level, presented in the same way to make this sort of bigger world, which I'm curious, I guess, how you came to that at the start and how you decided to present it that way, because there's plenty of visual artists who have interesting sounds behind what they do, and there's plenty of DJs and producers who have interesting visuals behind what they do, but I think it's very rarely presented as this sort of 50-50 collaboration, put all of this together and it becomes bigger than just its parts kind of idea.
How did we come to that? I honestly don't really know.
It's a good question. I mean, like we started the project together, even with 3 people back in the day. Good friend Joris.
And this was at school when it started?
Yeah. This was in art school, and Joris, like very early on, figured out like, hey, this is not my life's calling. I'd rather stick to just directing, and he's a phenomenal director.
And is that what he was doing for the project at the start?
Yeah. And
that's also. Yeah, we didn't have enough money to make actual like big budget video clips. So his role in that time as well was more on the sidelines and a more hypothetical one for the future as well. So that's probably also why he wanted to actually focus on doing the stuff that he was supposed to do for the project.
Yeah, because I mean, like me and yours lived together, and Vince stayed over at our house quite a bit. And I think we started Droeloe in like my final year of college. Same for yours, and
I was already dropped out, I believe.
Yeah, or you dropped out that year or something like that.
That probably that year.
Yeah. I think something like, and I think
probably because of it as well.
I think the point where like I graduated and yours graduated, I think was kind of like a turning point for us, where it's like, well, damn, we now got to like find a job, and like, will this suffice as a job for now? And I think that was kind of hard for Joris to justify for himself, like, hey, this hypothetically in a couple of years might be something that could actually function as a full-time job, but maybe not directly.
Did it function as that for you guys? How was that at the start? Because I mean, everybody starts somewhere. You got to build it up. If you're just getting out of school, traditionally, that's a time when people don't have a ton of money. How did you make it work for those first couple of years?
I had a job on the side. And I think you also did some. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I used to just freelance for a bunch of design studios, and that's what I kind of did in the beginning. Like work for a week somewhere else, and then work on the project for 2 weeks, and then work for a week at someplace else. We basically just, I guess, non-verbally decided like, hey, we're going to do this no matter what, and if we have to do something else on the side, then that's fine for now.
What was your side job, Vince?
I pushed people in wheelchairs around from one location in a building to the other in a rehabilitation center. So like I helped them from their living and sleeping quarters to the places where they did their therapies and their all that kind of stuff. And it was actually great because I got a lot of interesting conversations out of it as well, and talked a lot about life. And they opened up to me in an interesting way because I wasn't a nurse, I wasn't a therapist, and I wasn't anything. So there was no reason for them to hold stuff back or be anxious about my response or anything. So it was actually a great, inspiring time as well and I got like a super good physique because of it, because I was walking the whole day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's right. This man was getting his steps in.
Right. How did you land on that job? That seems such a random.
I think it was like a job center. How do you call that?
Oh yeah, sure. Like a placement center. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was sheer luck, I guess.
That's interesting. I mean, and I think to tie it back into your guys' project, I mean, it is a very conceptual project, right? And you talk about getting inspiration from talking to older people about life and that sort of thing. And it makes me curious, in the audio visual collaboration that is your guys' project, where does a song start? How does a new creation start? Does it start from an idea, some inspiration from a conversation you had? Does it start from a visual idea that you have, Hein? Is there a typical way a song takes form?
Most of the time, it's like that. I work on an idea musically that stems more from a feeling, and there's no concept attached to it whatsoever. And most of the time, halfway through, when we decide, this could be a track that we want to finish and release, then we start thinking about what could the concept around this feeling be. So Hein and I will then start brainstorming and thinking how we can amplify those elements that are more storytelling within the music, but also of course in the visual representation of it. And then we work towards like the same end goal to try and tell that story as well as possible.
It makes me wonder, because I think that's something you guys achieve very well. And I think that's one of the reasons people are so drawn to what you do. But there's always this weird thing. I talk about this a lot on the show, where I like to overthink things, and I like to analyze and philosophize and apply that to what we do, to music and to art. But then the best music and art is always, sort of the simplest and the purest, right? And is that something you've struggled with, or something you've sort of figured out any hacks for, of how to overthink it while not overthinking it?
Ooh, yeah, that is a paradox in itself. Yeah. It has been a struggle from time to time. Definitely, there was this one period, like more in the beginning of Droeloe. I think around the time that I created Bon Voyage, I made a lot of songs around that time that were like way too complex and way too full, and then I tried to remind myself of how simple a track like ZZZ was, which I don't even remember making. Actually, it was like done so quickly. But that was also for me where like a little bit of that magic was. So I always tried to find that spark of making something so simple but still so
Do you tend to work quickly once you get started?
That really, really depends. I work a lot in phases. So in the sense that I'm right now in a phase that I don't make any music at all since I finished the Aim Up music.
Right. And
before that, I worked in a way that I used my notebook all the time. I wrote down every little thing. And the phase before that, I just created as many work in progresses as I could. I always love to try and find different ways to start music because it keeps me fresh. It keeps me on my toes. But there isn't that I haven't found a way of making music get that is actually that is my way, if that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting you say you don't even remember making ZZZ, which, I think a lot of people would look at as sort of your breakout track, right? The track that was the first thing people heard from you in a lot of cases. And maybe that's the secret, is just somehow being able to put yourself so in the moment that when you're finished, you sort of don't realize what just happened, right?
I think so. It's never been able to do that since, though. But maybe at one point again.
Sure. Well, Hein, how about you on the visual side of things? Do you approach it? Do you think about it the same way?
Yeah, kind of. I think maybe to come back a little bit, I think it's interesting where it's like Vince says like ZZZ is something that he doesn't even remember making anymore. And I think that's maybe like the best form of creation, where it just goes, you're so in the moment and it goes so fast. But I think kind of like maybe tying it back even further to like the beginning of our conversation, that rare moment is something that's so hard to fabricate, but you still have to do a release every month. That I think
that exactly
that I think at some point you kind of start learning how to maybe force that, like massage that inspiration into something, and I think that's kind of like what I've been trying to figure out for myself. Like there's pieces of art that I've made in literally 30 minutes. I think for Kintsugi, for example, that was 30 minutes, super simplistic. It worked, and that's great,
Still one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's
30 minutes.
Still one of my favorites too. Like it was beam, bam, boom, and done. But there's other pieces, like I think I Can't Wait artwork. I've worked on that for like 2-3 weeks every day, and still when I look at it, it's like, yeah, it's cool, but I think I could do more. But the question is like, do I have to do more, or did I actually have to do less to make it better? And I think that kind of, that's something that I've been like struggling with in my head, is that duality between like, I think within art, it's like you either rely on presentation or you rely on fundamentals. It's sometimes hard to rely on both the presentation and the fundamentals, and kind of finding that balance is tricky, but that's something that I'm trying to work towards.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, right? Because especially at this point, you're professionals, quote unquote, and you can rely on a certain skill level that you have in your back pocket. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every time you sit down, you're going to be really inspired and know exactly what you want to do. And so, it's such an interesting thing, because I think everybody at every level still hits this, where you can know that you are an excellent artist and you can still sit down and make something terrible,
Yes, which has happened very often.
Yeah.
If only people heard the stuff that we make and not release. Holy moly!
Yeah. the amount of LOL I don't know files I have on my computer is insane.
Well, that's the thing too, right? Is there's this myth of these. I mean, even take it back to Jimi Hendrix. I'm sure Jimi Hendrix had some terrible recordings that he would never want people to hear, right? There's this myth of this sort of, the genius artist, or this, whatever you want to call it, that I don't really think exists. I mean, there's definitely people who I've seen work and I say, wow, I don't know how they did that, or wow, that's really impressive. But at the end of the day, I don't know. I still think it's just hard work and sort of putting the time in at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. But I do think there's definitely people that have like trained themselves very much to be as consistent as possible.
Yeah, consistent is a great way to put it.
Because like I was watching a bunch of videos on, and I'm definitely going to butcher this dude's last name, Mark Rebillier, I think.
Oh yeah. I think it's Rebillier.
Yeah, Rebillier. But that dude's ridiculous. Like it literally feels like he walks into the room, grabs a piano, and just shreds.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah, but I think he's very. I mean, I found out that he does all his shows pretty much free, which I think he's just trained himself very much to be as consistent as possible.
Yeah, true. Also, it's kind of similar like freestyle rappers, right? They at some point have such a big vocabulary and rule set that they can pick from in their own mind that they just instantly have all these bits of a couple of bars.
Right.
And I think for a guy like Mark, he probably trained himself in a way that he has all these like tricks and small things to keep the crowd invested. And because he like I've watched the whole show of him that he did in Amsterdam.
Yes, I watched that one too.
I've seen that one.
Oh
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's amazing because he's not making music the whole time. He's engaging with people. He's like out of a conversation, a new thing like sprouts, and it flows so organically that it has to be built up from some sort of preconceived rule set that he has created by just doing it an awful lot. And that's amazing. And also in the sense from the genius, I think, no, there might not be something like a genius, but I do think that what we were talking about earlier, how if you're like super in the moment and just in tune with the choices and why you want to make the choices in a art sense, creative sense, that might be the genius inside of us. Because if like that here and now feeling, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe the genius part of it is being able to kind of like what Hein said, being able to just more quickly put yourself in that open, pure space and just being open to whatever comes. It's not necessarily that your brain is working so hard. You have such a giant brain that you can just create these things no one else could think of, but it's that you're able to, it's almost the opposite. It's almost like you're able to turn your brain off faster than other people.
Yeah, true. Oh, yeah, there was this great quote from this book, The War of Art.
Oh, yeah, I know that book.
Yeah, someone got asked the question, when do you like only work when you're inspired? Yes. When does inspiration mostly hit you? Every morning at 9 a.m. Like that sense of just putting yourself to it and like, yeah, it's conditioning yourself, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you guys have both referenced, that sort of one track a month mentality that, you have to put creativity on a schedule to a certain extent, especially at the start to just sort of get out there and get your name known. What do you in those early years, like you put out ZZZ and people start paying more attention to what you're doing over time. You start, playing some shows. You put out some more music, some more people see it. What did that early time feel like? Did it feel like it was sort of an explosion and all of a sudden you're doing all these things you never imagined? Or did it feel more of kind of a slow burn that it was, just another brick on top of another brick?
Definitely more leaning towards an explosion, at least from my end.
Definitely. I think like when ZZZ came out, I think it was our second release with Bitbird, the first one being Make My Day, that never even landed on like DSPs or anything like that because it had a sample in it. Bitbird was cool enough to just release it on SoundCloud back in the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, ZZZ came out and like we didn't really know what to expect. And all of a sudden we got a text message from a mutual friend of us like, hey, you guys are in the viral top 50 at like number 5 or something. And we were like, yes. Nuts. We were like, yes, sick. I don't know what the viral top 50 is.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. What is that?
What happens now?
Yeah. What does that mean? Like next thing we know, we got like all of these calls from a bunch of like major labels in the Netherlands with like, hey, we want to like sign you guys for whatever the fuck. And that was a whole interesting spiel, I guess, because we took a bunch of meetings. Didn't have a manager back then, so Plus, we knew jack shit about the music industry.
Dude, dealing with a major label, I won't say bidding war, but dealing with a lot of interest from multiple major labels when you have no management, that is a crazy thing to think about.
Yeah, and it's like back then, it just constantly felt like they wanted to sign us to re-release CZZ with a proper vocal performance on it. Like that's kind of where every conversation anchored back in the day, where it's like, hey, we want to take this thing that you guys did that was organically successful and inject some major label juice into that shit.
Yeah, but it was in the end not that. Well, it was still weird, of course, but we weren't
overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. We weren't really necessarily. Yeah, because we very much kept in mind that there were so many parties that like showed interest at once. That we thought like, yeah, let's just see how like who is the most. We have nothing to lose. We have all the time in the world, and I'm very glad that we didn't jump on anything without thinking too much about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also mainly because this whole project kind of started as whatever, we got nothing to lose type thing. It wasn't like we both had like the inspiration at like 5 years old, like, hey, I want to be a touring trap artist, whatever. It was just something that happened in the spur of the moment, and therefore I think we had the luck of being able to kind of see it from a bird's eye view.
That's interesting, right? That maybe because of sort of the way you came together and the way you founded the project, what you wanted out of it, that you were maybe a little more immune to some of the things people could dangle in front of your face, right? Because I think the major label deal, they're dangling that dream of, being a famous whatever artist, and they, we can turn you into X person. But if that was never your goal from the start, that is kind of a lucky thing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
I don't want to put words in your guys' mouths either. I mean, when you started it, if that wasn't your goal, what was the goal?
To create stuff that we thought ourselves that was cool, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, if other people caught onto it, that would be an added benefit. And that's actually still the mentality that we do everything with.
I mean, that's great. And it's, I think, extremely lucky and just awesome that you were able to have that from the start, because I think, again, no management, major labels after you, that's, for a lot of artists, I think, a dangerous position, because you just want to be, for a lot of people, you just want to be out of the struggle. All of us struggle at the start, and the appeal of just not having to struggle for a little while seems great, right? At the start.
Yes.
And you don't necessarily care how you get there, at least, or you don't even know you should care about that at the start, right?
I guess that the struggle in itself got more apparent to us later down the line, actually, than it was something that we were introduced with right away. Because before we started Droeloe, the struggle was mainly like, how are we finishing our schools, and how do we live by ourselves in a house that is different than that from our parents, with lack of all the routines that they have. Yeah, pay rent and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even that. These were problems that weren't on our radar yet.
No, I think very much like later down the line, when everything was kind of going, and we were doing a lot of shows and doing the ticket tours and stuff like that, and production, crew, all of that stuff, and like kind of, we couldn't really hide behind our frugal mentality. Just paying rent, paying groceries, and that's it. Like now, there were other people that needed to get paid, and production that needed to get paid for, and everything like that. And I think that's kind of when the whole business thing kind of hit us like a ton of bricks. With like, hey,
we're running a business. What?
Yeah, we're running a business now, and we got to pay a whole bunch of taxes and and stuff like that, and like the insurance and all of that, all of those things. And I think that was kind of like when the feels like when the two guys that were just making music and art for fun kind of transformed into like, hey, shit, we're running a business.
Yeah. Well, and I have to imagine too, you also have to let people in on the gang, right? Like you have to let people into your circle, which it probably, I have to assume, felt weird if, the collaboration, what's special about it is sort of what you guys are creating together, these shared ideals. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like you're being forced to include more people in that circle just because of how big it's gotten. Was that sort of difficult to let more people in and to let other ideas in?
It was definitely difficult to delegate anything that was more creative, which we didn't do that often as well, actually. But we, like, down the line, we got more interested in how we can be creative around the whole marketing campaigns that we do, like with the artworks and the music. And that was sometimes a little bit of not even actually. The team has been like really supportive in everything creatively. But we had more to communicate, and therefore there was more that needed to be translated from our minds to other people. And that the only thing that, it was a little tired. Exhausting is not even is too much of a word of it, but
it's definitely a skill, man. Like, just delegating stuff, especially creatively, or just communicating to multiple people who are going to take care of some executional things on that creative idea it's a skill. It's a skill to communicate that properly.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I mean, maybe that's a good way to talk about a matter of perspective and the project, the sort of culmination of all of this. I don't know what you guys, it's an anthology of work that you've done. There's also new material. There's these reimaginings of old songs. And there's this whole museum, this virtual museum, right, that people can experience. And I mean, for the people who don't know what I'm talking about, maybe just briefly, if you want to talk about what that is, what the project is, what the museum is all about, how people can check it out. We should probably mention that.
True.
Probably.
True. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the museum, or do you want to, Vince?
Well, you can definitely start.
Cool. Yeah. So we decided to do this virtual museum. I mean, we've done, I think, like 3 to 4 physical art galleries surrounding EPs before. Of course, 2020 sucks. Can't do that in person anymore. So that kind of spawned the idea of like, hey, can we maybe take this experience, amplify it, and put it in a digital medium? And we ended up, going with Discord, and creating this like audio visual experience where you were walking through this museum, and with the lovely narration of Vince telling you what the ideas behind the songs were, and kind of giving you a new perspective on the works. And that's live now on our Discord. Most likely in the future will be probably watchable on YouTube as well.
Yes,
because unfortunately, just like our previous show, our old shows,
we've MacGyvered everything.
This whole solution is super jerry-rigged, and we pretty much every morning have to restart all of the streams and do everything, and it's running off of a computer that's in the office at Bitbird, and we're not physically there. I mean, I'm in Vancouver. Vince has to like call people at 6 a.m. in the morning with like, yo, are you at the office? Can you go to the office right now?
And you have to video call each other and walk each other through it with
I mean,
like
that's charming, though. That actually makes me happy, because that sounds like where it all started, right? Like that's some art school shit. Is
true. Yeah, definitely.
Is just like taking on an idea that's maybe just a little bit too big, and figuring out how to make it work. I mean, that's very charming. I think that's actually maybe a perfect way to present the project, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like we had talks with Discord when we conceived the idea, and they were super down to help, of course. But unfortunately, the technology that we were asking for wasn't really in the pipeline yet. We told them the idea of like, oh, well, can we just jerry rig it? And they kind of reluctant at first, like, oh, we don't know if it's going to work. But I mean, it's working. It's working.
Oh, no, it's super cool, man. I checked it out. Yeah.
I think it's still online, right?
Yeah, it should be. Man, fuck, otherwise you got to call somebody real quick.
Yeah, you can't.
Oh, yeah, it's still online.
Nice.
It's still online.
Yeah,
Sweet.
no, it's a really interesting idea, and it's something I had never seen before, which I think is that just being able to say that is so rare in what we do, because I feel like most ideas that we see, even if somebody does something really cool or executes it in an interesting way, it's, an evolution of an idea you've seen before. And this, I didn't really have a lot of references for this.
Yeah, it was, I think also, we were pretty, how do you say that? Taken aback by this idea as well, a little bit at some point, but it was really fun to come up with ideas like this with the concept of a matter perspective in mind, because that opens so many different doors that at some point, we just thought like, hey, why don't we actually try this weird thing? And also in that perspective, we thought that it would be great to see if we could add another like fully different perspective to the work that already was here in the form of these little stories that are not even the concepts of the music and the artwork themselves. It's more derived from it. And yeah, it's different versions of like translations of the same story in the end. I guess.
That's beautiful too, right? I mean, that makes me think about sort of old school, it's like liner notes or something, where it's not, when I say the word museum, it's not like you're going there and it's just you reciting, this is this song and this is what it means, but it's,
was made then and then. Yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah. But it's context, and it's a bigger world, right? And just a deeper experience for people. And I think that's really interesting. Well, you mentioned, Bitbird, and obviously you guys have worked closely with them throughout the years. And my understanding is that San Holo was, an early influence or early important person in your career. How did you guys meet up originally? How'd you all link up and become aware of each other?
It's a really funny story.
Yes, a really funny story.
Yeah, I think it started with, Vince got hit up by somebody because that person thought that he had a studio.
Shall I run like
the whole thing? Let's just do the whole thing.
Okay. I got hit up by an ex-classmate of mine who said like, hey, I got asked to do this studio session with this rapper from Switzerland, and he wasn't going to make it. This was actually Jero Vandal.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's crazy. He's amazing.
He is amazing. He's really dope. But yeah, he gave me that opportunity solely because he wasn't able to make it. So then I went and I made an Instagram a video of that studio. And then another guy on Facebook a couple days later hit me up, was like, yo, you have a studio. And this was Andy from Lasco. I told him, no, that wasn't my studio, but I do study at the school where I can rent studios. So maybe we can go there and like y'all can do your session and I can just sit in the back and chill out. So we did. And in that studio session, it was Lasco together with Bo Damien. And then Bo Damien, I showed my music, Droeloe's music, what we had till that point. I think it was our Zoo.
It could be. I
think so. Yeah. And then I showed it to them, and then Damien reposted our zoo on his SoundCloud, and that's how Thorwald, the co-owner of Bitbird, found that, showed it to Son Holo, and then Son Holo reached out to us on Twitter through DMs.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was really funny because Son followed us, and like we've told this story to a couple of people, and they were like, "That's crazy" or whatever. Because we like Son followed us, and we didn't know who he was at the time. We were like, "Oh, cool, this dude's Dutch. Oh, he has like 50K followers. Sick." And like people are always just like, "Oh, that's crazy," but it's like it's 5 years ago. Like stuff. Son has grown multitudes.
Oh yeah,
within 5 years. Back then, it wasn't really. It wasn't like Diplo reached out to us, you know.
Right.
So it makes sense. But yeah, he followed us on Twitter, and then he DM'd us, or I think Bitbird DM'd us on SoundCloud or something. And then we met up with Son and Tor and Booty, who was Son's manager at the time and later became our manager too. I think during Amsterdam Dance event at a Yellow Claw show, I think, where Son was opening for Yellow Claw. Nice. And like Amsterdam is these really tiny clubs with like no green room or whatever. So the only like type of like kind of like secluded area / quieter area we could get was the smoking area of the club. And that's where we met Son and Tor and Booty for the first time.
So we were still like screaming to each other because it was still hard to hear. And it was a great experience. Like, hey!
That's great. I just love the idea of, because from that point where everyone's still, like you said, Son wasn't who he is now, and his music didn't sound like what it sounds like now. And the same could be said about your own music. Just the idea of all of you guys meeting over the blaring like soundtrack of Yellow Claw, like going hard as hell.
Yeah, this whole wholesome interaction is initiated from blaring over Yellow motherfucking Claw.
Yes.
Oh, that's so good. Shit. What was I? Oh, I know what I was going to say. That's a much more interesting story than, sort of how my brain works. Because in my brain, I was just like, oh, they're Dutch. All the Dutch artists, they all know each other. It must have just been that kind of thing. Because I think from an American perspective, especially a nerdy American like myself who really thinks about this sort of thing, I don't know if this is true. You tell me what you think, but it seems like Dutch people and electronic music, there's this weird, I'm not saying you guys are necessarily just across the board better at it, but it's like it comes more naturally. There's this weird intuitive thing, this spin that Dutch people seem to just be able to put on it. And it's not, from anything from what you do to what Son does to, super EDM-y people, Tiesto or whoever. It's all across the map. Like I asked Laid Back Luke the same question and he was like, I don't know. But is it something you've thought about, or it's something you would have experienced yourself?
Yeah, I actually thought about this very recently. You did as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had an interview last week or something like that where we kind of also talked about it. My perspective on it is kind of like, I think the Netherlands and electronic music, it's been very much embedded in the culture. I think when me and Vince grew up, like Chesto was in his prime time in the Netherlands, at least. Like the dude was like a national icon. If the Netherlands would like knight people for the cultural achievements, they would definitely have knighted Chesto back then. And I think that made it really simple for kids like us to be interested in electronic music, and for kids to be like, I want to be a DJ, and that would be like, oh, sick, you want to be like Chesto, but that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. I also I thought about this later too. That's like deriving from that conversation that we had back then, because I was wondering what is like traditional Dutch like music culture, and there is not that much of it. There is some, definitely, but it's mostly Hoempapa, carnival music, which has a very like heavy on the count accent going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I do, yes.
Yeah, and when you look at like the early stuff from Chesto and the trance that he used to make, it's kind of there are similarities there, and I think that in a sense the Dutch music scene, or the traditional Dutch music stuff, didn't really get that much attention because of how divided in culture, like the above the rivers and below the rivers are. Where below the rivers they celebrate Carnival every year, like go really hard on it. Hardcore. And above the rivers, they kind of push that all away, and I think that's probably because of the different religions, being Catholicism and like the new, more sober, reformed versions of Christianity that were more a thing above the rivers.
That's interesting.
And maybe that gave this urge of trying or like to push away everything that that was traditional and really embracing the more progressive stuff. And that's also, if you look at the technology with all the Dutch is also a very big technological country, of course. So I don't know. It was a thought. It's maybe it's not even true, but
no, that's interesting. I mean, it makes me wonder, are either of you guys religious? Does spirituality play a role in creativity for either of you in any way?
I personally, I have been baptized, but I've not really been, really raised religiously. But I've always, I think I'm more of a agnostic.
Yeah.
There must be something, and I actually take a lot of comfort and also inspiration, or at least motivation from the idea that there might be something bigger than myself. But more than that, not so much. It's not an active thing that I incorporate in the creative process.
How about for you, Hein?
No, me neither. I mean, I in the Netherlands, you have this thing with, which is like, it's like a baptized name. Basically, like your parents have a normal name for you, which is Hein in my case. But then they give you like your official like church names or whatever. And for me, it's Hendrikus Johannes Antonius.
Wow.
Which it's like, they just grab a bunch of saints and throw them together into one name. And so I do have that, but I think that's because my dad's side of the family was very religious, where my mom definitely isn't religious. I think she did get baptized and stuff, but that's kind of the way it goes in the Netherlands. Everybody prior to our generations is just, you get baptized, you do a communion, I guess, or
communion,
communion and everything. But I personally am not really that religious. I kind of flirt with the idea that there might be something, but some days I'm like, no, it can't be. And some days I'm like, oh, well, like there is a reason for all of this. But I don't necessarily really involve spirituality into creativity that much, but I do have to say that I can get very inspired from religious pieces of art, but maybe that's also just because religion has such a dominion on culture.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, there is, there is something really cool about a big giant cross in a beautiful like Catholic church. For sure. It just looks really cool, and like the visual signifiers of that are really cool. And maybe that answers the question, I guess.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing for music too, right? I mean, the religion had a stranglehold on art and on music for so big of a part of human history, right? Like the church had like all the bangers for hundreds of years.
They had all the IDs for all the bands.
Bro, all the church had all the IDs.
They copy striked everyone.
Man, dude,
they definitely did.
The 1800s version of a DMCA takedown.
It's just a beheading, I think. Yeah.
That's what they call Inquisition, I guess.
Yeah.
Instead of ghost producers, you're a heretic. Like,
oh shit.
Oh man, but yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you guys, more or less. I mean, I replace baptism with circumcision, and that's about where I'm at with it. It's like after that point, I was like, yeah, I'm Jewish, but not really particularly. And it's an interesting thing because I take, kind of like you said, I take inspiration from the history of it. I mean, certainly the people who came before me, and absolutely the art and the music and all of that they created. But to me, as I get older, I think I flipped it into, instead of taking inspiration from spirituality, I think for me, I'd figured out that creating is sort of my spirituality, and it's the only time where I really feel connected to whatever is bigger than me, whatever that is. And, I don't know, I'll probably never know what that actually is, but it's something I've become more comfortable with over the years, because when I was younger, I was just more skeptical and less open and just be like, no, that's all bullshit.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think it's maybe even that have you ever had that, like, you made something that you were like, whoa, how did I even make this? Like that wonder of what the actual hell,
right?
Or like seeing something else that tells such a story so coherently. Religion has the best visual storytelling out there, I think, at least when looking like in history.
Yeah,
it's amazing. So I definitely can see where that.
I mean, that was another part of it too. I don't know why I'm just like hating on old religion, but it's like they also had all the money, right? So they could just hire the best artists and they could collect, they were the major label. They could collect everybody under one roof.
Their marketing was on point.
Now you have Capital, Atlantic. Back then you had Christianity, Judaism, Islam.
Islam.
Yeah. Dude, Islam controlled the whole Middle East.
Yeah.
Buddhism was a little bit more indie, but they were okay with that.
They were the indie label. That's great.
Yeah. Taoism was this like weird, like Southeast Asian underground thing.
They weren't concerned about making money. They were just doing without doing.
Oh man, that's so funny. Well, so
dude,
imagine. No, wait. What were you gonna say?
Imagine having TikTok back in those days.
Yo.
But talking about cultural differences, what was it like for you guys when you first started getting out of the Netherlands and touring? Particularly the U.S. Did that change your worldview? Did it change anything about the way you wrote music or thought about the presentation of your art?
For me, definitely. For me, it was quite the culture shock to be in America for the first time, because it was. I used to watch a lot of movies when I was younger, and most of these movies were American movies. So to see these places and to actually be in these places and see experience how different they felt than when I was looking at the movies that portrayed them, brought this whole new context to how flexible reality is, if that makes sense. Because I'm sitting here in the Netherlands and it's dark now over here, and you go into a plane and you end up in a different time zone, and see, like, interact with people who you realize have a total different background than where you came from. It felt like a whole new reality, and that definitely also inspired me to create or come up with different concepts or stories as well.
What was your idea of the U.S. before you got there? You mentioned, like, what movies are we talking about?
I watched so many different movies. I think it was pretty idolized because of the movies. It was definitely, this big beautiful world called America where everything is happening and not that much seems to be wrong about it. Although there were also these movies that were portraying it less.
I know what you mean, though. It's that idea of the American dream, right? Is that, it might be hard, but you can make it. And it's, it's bigger and brighter than anything you've seen before. Yeah.
But
it definitely is bigger and brighter than a lot of things. Just but I think that's just in sheer amplitude.
That is definitely true.
Yeah, we know how to crank the volume over here. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think that's like, I think maybe that was one of my biggest realizations with like America. In America, things can go to 11.
Yeah. Was that, talking about that idea, was it the people? Was it the culture? Did it, do you notice a strong difference talking to, somebody in the Netherlands versus talking to somebody in the US?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Dutch people are way more reserved and way more, at least in some parts, with a mentality like, if I don't know you, then I don't really care, and you have to do something really cool, from like my perspective, for me to accept you.
Yeah,
which is terrible. But then again, when we were in LA for the first time, for instance, we noticed that like the total opposite of that coin, where it almost felt like people were too socially
like socially aggressive, almost
aggressive. Yeah. And it felt, that's a good term. It didn't feel sincere anymore. Like the sincerity got lost because of that, and that was a very interesting to feel for the first time too.
Yeah, LA, a famously insincere town, right?
Yeah,
maybe more than anywhere else.
Yeah.
I think that's also something that's just very present in like playing a show in LA versus Amsterdam. Like I feels in the Netherlands and in most of Europe, like it doesn't matter that you're up on that stage, you're still going to prove to all the people in the crowd that you're worth being there. But once you get them, then you really get them. Which I think is something that we've noticed. Like, being Dutch, we have to play 80 every year. Like that's just that comes with the territory pretty much. And which I think, which 80 is the time. It's a big survival week, but
I think that's similar to, for anyone who doesn't know 80. It's like Miami Music Week or South by Southwest or something like that in the States.
And like I think every year we played it, we won over the crowd a little bit more. And then when we did our first ever like headline show in Amsterdam, that was, I think, one of the most energetic and most like fulfilling shows that we've ever done. Because it felt like we really, over all of these years, earned it, and we won these people over to really, really connect with us. Where it sometimes feels in America, it's like, I don't care, like as long as you play a core battle.
Yeah, that's really funny. Well, in America too, it's so big, and especially in the major cities, there's so many things all happening on top of each other, right? And so I think it could go both ways. It could either be there's less pressure to sort of feel like this has to be the perfect thing, the perfect presentation, because LA keeps it moving, right? So, you go to LA, you put on a good show, you keep it moving, but then also it can feel overwhelming in the sense of, well, there's so much noise. How do I cut through this noise? How do I stand out?
Yeah.
Did you feel like, was it hard to break into the US? Was that, or did that just sort of come with the territory once you started touring?
I haven't didn't really experience it as hard. to be honest.
No, I think it's also because our music back in the day was just a lot more alive in America. Just the genre, I guess, was a lot more alive in America versus Europe. I think Europe is now, in the last year or two, kind of slowly getting to that point of where America was 5 years ago, basically, with just acceptance of that type of electronic music and the electronic pop kind of crossover thing, like just electronic crossover, I guess.
Sure.
Because I still felt in the Netherlands that back then it was either like deep techno or like hardcore and hardstyle and then a little bit of trance. Like those were like the three accepted electronic.
And a tiny bit of drum and bass in the north.
And in the north, like thanks to Noisia and
right.
thanks to Noisia, there was like this tiny shining beacon of light,
which we grabbed onto, like our life depended on it.
Oh yeah, that you were big into them early on.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's that's how we bonded initially.
Really?
Didn't we? I think you knew about my music because you were looking for someone for the project.
Now we go back again.
Yeah, true. But then first conversation that we had, though, we instantly bonded because we were like, yeah, what kind of music do you listen to? And we both like, oh, Noisia, oh, sick. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Did you want to make music like them? Was that ever a thought at the start?
I thought I wasn't able to. It was like their level was so high up that for a long time I thought like, why even try?
Yeah. No, I mean, they are, if we're talking about those genius artists, they are one of the ones where frequently still to this day, I'm like, I don't have any idea how they did that.
No. Yeah.
We've talked about a lot, but I guess I'm curious. I'm sure you guys are getting asked a lot of, what's the future look like? What are your next plans? All of that. And, how does it come to a close? How do you decide to, separate and sort of leave your flag planted, all of that? I feel like that's out there. And I feel like unless you guys really have something burning you want to say, it's like, people grow as a project. You grow as separate individuals. And sometimes you end up, going different directions. But I am curious, going from a duo, a partnership, a collaboration, to now going into whatever the next step is going to be. It is theoretically a solo project for both of you. And does that seem exciting? Does that seem scary? Does that seem really anything? What are your thoughts on that?
Both. Exciting in the sense that it gives a lot of opportunity because it is a tabula rasa, which anything could happen. But at the same time, it's hard because obviously the fact that we've been in the process of like getting to this point for such a long time now doesn't mean that fans, for instance, find it as easy to think about it shifting into that direction instantly as well. So I'm sometimes a little scared of, in what way will fans still really miss Hein when I am releasing new stuff for the new chapter of Droeloe, which is fully understandable as well, of course. But the thing that I'm slightly scared of maybe is that I really hope that it doesn't take away from what we are both trying to do, and that like Hein doesn't get hit up with by people like, hey, I really miss you doing work for Droeloe, or that people hit me up with, hey, really miss the artwork that Hein made, or I really, that is more of an like slightly anxious thing, but I can also at the same time, in the end, it doesn't matter because we're still gonna do whatever we think is the coolest to do. So with that knowledge, we just have to keep going. And if people like it, then they do, and if they don't, then they don't.
Well,
So
and
it's not up to us.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe a great note for anybody who appreciates what you do, is that if they like Droeloe and they like this project, then they like your ideas and your philosophy. And if what you're saying is that this is the same thing we've always been doing, is just doing what we thought was the coolest thing to do at the time, that to me, you can't really argue with that.
Yeah,
true. Yeah,
and I think that's something that we're just gonna keep doing. Maybe not together anymore, but we're still just gonna make stuff that we like making and that we think is cool. And I think it's also like something that's hard for us to maybe realize sometimes. Is like, for us, this whole separation has been like a 9-month long process from when we initially decided to do it to where we are now. But for fans, it's like a sudden thing, and therefore we kind of ease into the changes and everything, and for us, it's not really a big jump. But for fans, it probably is. So I mean, I totally get that people would be slightly shocked by it or taken aback or whatever. But I think there's just two things. We're still going to keep doing what we like doing, and that's probably not really going to change. Plus, the stuff that we did together is still there, and it's going to go away. It's not like we're hitting the big old delete button.
Right.
But it's still there. You can still enjoy it. And I think, I mean, honestly, from my personal perspective, there's only a few projects that I've been a very big fan of for a very extended period of time, because stuff changes, and that's natural. And I think that's needed as well.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Even if I don't know, can't really pick an example here, but like, let's just say Radiohead or whatever. Even if I hate the new Radiohead album, I can still love the old Radiohead album because it's still there. You can still listen to it, and you can still enjoy it. What I've been doing lately is like, I've been making a Spotify playlist for myself every month, which is new music that comes out that month. Most of the joy I get is from listening back to what I liked this time but a year ago. And what was in that playlist then. Which I think, it's still like, it still exists, but if something isn't not cool anymore because it's not new.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and it's all tied to memories, right? And tied to nostalgia, like you said. And, the same way the music is still going to be there, the art's still going to be there. We're still going to have whatever memory people associate with your guys' work up to this point. They're always going to have that too. And to take your Radiohead example, I mean, even if you don't like the new Radiohead album, you sort of trust them to be like, well, if this one isn't really my thing, I'm still going to check out the next one because I like what they do. I appreciate them as artists. And I certainly think you guys have earned that status over these years. I mean, talking about, as we kind of wrap it up, talking about memory and nostalgia, just for fun, do you guys have any memories from the project that just that you just think about a lot, that maybe like run on a loop in your head sometimes in the background? It doesn't have to be like, a crazy tour story or anything like that, but just some shared memory, some experience that you just end up thinking about a lot.
Yeah, I have one. It's not like something that I keep on thinking about, but something that kind of came back to me a couple of days ago, which was really funny. I think it was the first time that we were on tour with Son in America, and both me and Vince kind of got we were a little under the weather for a couple of days. And
San Diego?
Yeah, in San Diego. And then we flew to San Francisco, and the air quality was a lot like fresher, like not as humid and everything like that. And I remember that we went to go grocery shopping really quick, and then had this they called it Dutch Tiger Crunch bread, which, I mean, it's kind of accurate, but I remember that we got that bread and it was just so good to finally have like some like Dutch style bread again for some reason. That I think, yeah, I was thinking about that too, because I saw the Dutch Tiger Crunch style bread in the grocery store the other day.
Oh, that's really funny.
I remember
awesome.
I remember that moment where we were like, yo, sick, like finally, no more shitty American Wonder Bread.
Just that little touch of home or comfort, right? That can mean so much.
Definitely. Also cheese, like everywhere where we found cheese, that was slightly more like a Dutch Gouda or something. It was the beacon of light.
Yeah, I think we had this whole period of just like whenever we had downtime in some city of finding a place they sold authentic Dutch Gouda.
Great.
And we like I think we got our tour manager addicted to it at some point.
Yeah.
He was because there's really nothing quite like it.
I love that. That's exactly what I was hoping for out of that question. Anything come up for you, Vince?
I think a lot about the times that I was staying in like Airbnbs in places that I had never been before. But then for a week and just by myself, and those have been really I've learned a lot about myself because it's so much like throwing myself in the deep end, putting myself in an environment that I'm totally unfamiliar with, and to make it work, to think about, hey, how do I want to be productive, how do I create a little bit of routine, and it actually it helps me to think back on those moments when I'm trying to create routine in my current life, in trying to create a space that I can call home, because it was very much fighting with that concept of what is home for me. So that's something that I think about a lot, but probably also now because I just moved into a new place in the Netherlands. So
nice.
That's probably also why I'm thinking a lot about those moments as well.
Sure, of course. I mean, that's that's another thing we didn't really touch on, is that the touring lifestyle, when it's really going strong, you're a nomad, right? And it's hard to feel rooted. It's hard to feel like, anywhere is really your own.
Yeah, definitely. That's very much a thing that I've noticed, and also for a long time thrived on, because I just had my yellow backpack and my life was in there. Like literally my life was in there. And
yeah, dude, that yellow backpack has seen some shit.
Yeah, definitely. I never wanted to get a suitcase because I was always scared to leave it somewhere when I was on an airport, because you have to take it with you and actively grab it. And I just wanted to have something that was a part of me. So I walked around like a juggernaut. But yeah,
I think it's funny that I think we both we had you had your yellow backpack from the beginning. I had my backpack and then later a suitcase, and that's never changed.
True.
Like we haven't gotten a new one or whatever. No, it's still the yellow North Face backpack. My I don't know what brand it is backpack and my cheap ass suitcase. Like that's been the setup. We added a couple flight cases to it for production later on, but like that's always been the core thing, and that hasn't changed.
I love that. I mean, I think that's a theme in this whole conversation, is that you guys have managed to sort of hold on to where it started in a way, and to sort of hold on to your intentions about it from the beginning. And to me, I think that has to be one of the reasons why Droeloe has been as successful as it has up to this point, right? Is that sort of that certainty of a decision and a commitment. I think that's an important thing, man. Even down to something as little as a yellow backpack. I think those little reminders subconsciously help a lot.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
It's funny what you said about feeling like thinking about the concept of home and enjoying not having a home for a while. Only because I had San on the show months back, and he said almost exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that, he like really reveled in sort of being a wanderer and not really having anywhere to hang his hat, so to speak. And then only this year, of course, because this year changed a lot for a lot of people, that he's sort of trying to see the appeal of having a more permanent place.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is also, there was also slightly the difference in well, I wouldn't call it mentality, but more so future aspirations of like between me and Hein, where I was more, I didn't really care. And you didn't either, of course, but you like wanted to get in touch with that idea of home earlier than I did, or because I've, like you said, also because of the COVID stuff, I've been thinking more and more about my living situation as well, and that's also why I live in a different place right now, which I love. So it's it's really interesting. It's been a journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. As has this conversation. It's been really fun. I hope you guys had a good time before we.
Yeah, we definitely did.
Good.
Yeah, definitely did.
Good. Well, before we get out of here, we covered a lot, but is there anything else you want to get out there? Anything else that's on your mind? Anything else we didn't talk about? Anything you want to get out there, please feel free.
We covered a lot.
Yeah, we covered a lot. I think, we have no hidden marketing agendas.
Same.
Merch. That's the only thing.
Yeah, we dropped the merch collection, which we're really proud of. If you want to buy it, go ahead. If you don't, then that is fine.
Yeah.
We have a vinyl.
Be responsible with your money. That's also
be
important.
responsible with your money.
Yeah.
Rather pay rent than have a cool T-shirt. We have a vinyl coming out, which we're really excited about. That's the first time that we're doing any physical release. We obviously designed the whole package ourselves and everything. A lot of love, a lot of labor. We've yet to hold it in our hands ourselves, completely assembled. So we're super excited for that.
Nice.
But I'm glad that we get to share that moment with a bunch of our fans who already bought the vinyl. I guess the album's out. Go listen to it if you want to.
And again, for people, it's there's new stuff on it too, right? I mean, it's like, that's what I liked about the album, is that it is a look back, but it's also new, and it's an update of old things. It's what we were talking about earlier with like Vince's narration in the digital museum. It's more context. It's a broader world, right?
Yeah.
Great. Sweet. We did it.
We did
it. No, thank you guys, man. I really appreciate this. This was super fun.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. This has been the best interview that we've had in a long time.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that.
The fact that you didn't even, you were like, well, like, a bunch of people probably asked you guys about, like, why did you decide to split up and everything? But I mean, people change and people grow, so it makes sense. Like, the fact that you are not even going for that question is just great. Or it's like, we've had that same fucking question for a million times now.
Yeah, I mean, I figure if people want to know the answer to that, they can. It's out there,
Exactly.
I think you guys have said that enough.
Just check the statement if you want to, like, read the full detailed thing. But we grew apart. We felt like it wasn't really a healthy situation anymore for both of us creatively. So we decided to not do it anymore. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
No, but honestly, this interview, I wouldn't even call it an interview. This felt more like a great conversation. So thank you again.
Thank you, guys. Have a good rest of your day. Great talking to you.
You too. Dude. You too, man.
All right. Take care, guys.
Later.
Bye. that's the show. Shout out to Droeloe. Thanks for coming on, guys. That was great. For everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Don't forget, A Matter of Perspective, the new anthology album from Droeloe, is out right now, collecting not only their best works to date, but also new versions of old songs, as well as some brand new material as well. And if that's not enough, if you can't get enough Droeloe, they've also got an online art gallery that goes along with the anthology. It's on their Discord. It's on their YouTube. It's a really interesting experience. You got to go check it out. You can also follow me if you are so inclined. I'm at Willy Joy or at BackToBackPod on all social media. Or you can email me directly, backtobackpod@gmail.com. And if you liked what you heard today, if you would like to hear some more of it, if you would like to get more involved, if you just want to come say what up to me and hang out, we can do all of that over at the Back to Back Discord. The link for that is also in the description of this episode. Come hang out. It's a great group of people. Come share your art, share your music, share your thoughts, share your memes. All of that is at the Back to Back Discord. That's it for this week. I hope you're doing well out there. Once again, happy holidays, happy almost New Year. I mean, hell, by the time you're listening to this, it might be 2021. I don't know when you listen to these episodes. And if it is 2021 and I'm sending you a message from the past right now, man, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're happy and healthy. I hope the year is bringing you everything that you deserve and that you want. I'm very grateful for all the listeners out there, all the support that you've given this show this year, and I'm really looking forward to creating some awesome memories with all of you out there in 2021. So on that note, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, be safe. I'm sending you lots of love and encouragement. I hope you accomplish whatever goals you're trying to work on right now. That's it for this week. I love you guys. I'll talk to you in the new year. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.